And it looks like we're on the air and in your hair.
Well, I'll go with on the air. How's that? I'm thinking I don't want to be in anybody's hair just yet. We'll leave that towards the end of the broadcast, maybe.
Exactly. And this may not be a very long broadcast, boys and girls. Bob and I have been having good fun yesterday in pre-production and today because there's so much goofiness out there that, you know, you can't make some of the stuff up that we want to talk about.
Well, that's true. And, you know, the other side of that coin is that we may be able to say that this is our good news. It's the light edition.
That's right. It's the BORDERPOL Journal Light Edition for September 20. Hey, it's the last day of summer.
Well, it depends on which calendar, right? Some say it's the 20th, some say the 21st, some say the 22nd. So, yeah, whatever
Okay,
day.
well, we're almost at the last day of summer. Let's
That's
just...
right. If we're on the bell curve, we're already at the bottom of the slide.
Yes, we are. And it's been a good summer. It's been a good summer here in the beginning of the Midwest, you might say, in the Great Lakes Basin. We've had a great summer.
We've had
not too much rain.
Varying issues on ours. You know, some days we had way too much rain and some days we had way too much sun. That's one thing we haven't quite learned how to control yet, and I'm not even sure that AI will be able to do that either.
Yes, well, you know, they're worried about AI as we're in pre-production talking about the AI impact on our society.
Well, it is a very double-edged sword tool, shall we say. It can be certainly used for good, and on the other side of that, it can certainly be used for bad, given the fact that it can do so many calculations so quickly with issues of knowledge that go beyond what my mind can comprehend and come up with it so fast. And okay, so you need to maybe wordsmith it a bit, but by and large, you end up getting a really good product, be that a really good product or a really bad good product.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of discussion in the world of science that is dealing with AI, and they're raising the alarm bells. Elon Musk, in fact, said some months ago that AI is in some ways the devil incarnate, and humanity better be careful how much faith they put in into this creature, this beast, which has no emotion, has no feelings. It's a
to use our famous analogies now, there was a movie about that. And the famous line in the movie, "I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that."
Yes, exactly. And that movie's long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Most people today probably wouldn't be able to name that movie.
Well, we'll leave it for them to maybe do a little Google search and see if they can figure it out.
That's right. Well, we'll say look up HAL.
HAL, that's right.
Yeah.
HAL.
Exactly. And it had good music in it too, which was from the 1800s.
Yeah. Yes, well, good music. I wish there was a good theme song that we could have for the fiasco that we call the Canadian Parliament, but
well, well, there are lots of analogies we can have instead of just music.
I'm kind of thinking, what is it? Carole King, Bring in the Clowns?
Yeah. And you can also then use some fairy tales, like the Three Little Pigs. Okay. Huffing and puffing, I'll blow your house down, but they're only huffing and puffing.
Well, that's true, yeah. But I don't know. I think music is probably the best way to go. That can stir so many more emotions other than just blowing a house down.
you have to wonder though, how juvenile can you get? I mean, it's without naming the person particularly. Why do you say one thing and do something else?
Well, I think that that particular individual is trying to prove who, in my estimation, was a great Canadian icon, Rex Murphy.
Yes.
Said, "I'm sorry, sir, you cannot suck and blow at the same time." And I think this guy heard that, and since he's heard that, he's been trying to prove Rex Murphy wrong. Unsuccessfully, I think, but.
Well, after watching this particular individual's antics, it's apparent to me that the guy has a bad temper problem. And as one wag on the internet was saying, that maybe he needs to go to anger management training before continuing on. But I digress.
Well, it's easy to do that up here.
Yeah. Mind you, there's just as much silliness going on with our cousins south of the border these days. Well, after all, there are 40 some days left before mercifully that election will be done, and we'll know one way or another who is going to be jerking us around for the next 4 years. But the at least the free world, as they say, it's that place is in constant election mode. I mean, no sooner than well, yeah. I mean, even the way it's set up, they have the midterms every 2 years for a portion of their legislative, the House of Representatives. So every 2 years there's a wind up. You start a year before it happens. To say this presidential election has been going on for at least 3 years, it seems. Yeah. And we've gone from, pillar to post on some of these ideas. Yesterday, I thought there was a great line that Kamala Harris, for the Democrat, had about gun control. That she was on the Oprah Winfrey show, and she asked her about gun control, and Harris said, "Well, I own a gun, and if someone breaks," and I'm shortening down the discussion here. "If someone breaks into my house, I'll shoot him," and then started to laugh. And Oprah Winfrey's face just, she almost dropped her jaw. And then Harris says, "I'll just let the staff here fix that up later on, with the media." So, you told the truth out loud. The whole business of the gun argument, I mean, she basically put a thumbtack into the balloon of that one. Because clearly she's a gun owner and admits it. So now what are they going to do? Well, I guess we'll take that discussion off the plate here because, on the other hand, she didn't say she has an AK-47 or a submachine gun. So that's the good news.
Well, I guess unless they start digging and find out that she actually does, but then it's an interesting point. I guess, and I can't remember which politician it was in the U.S. that said that. If you can't buy an M1 Abrams tank to drive down the street, why should you be able to buy a machine gun, a fully automatic weapon? And I guess maybe that's where gun control could come in. You want to have a 45, or you want to have a 357 Magnum. Okay, but the fact that you can shoot off 600 rounds in a second or whatever, it just doesn't make sense. There really isn't a need for that, in my opinion.
Oh, I totally agree. It's ridiculous. Moreover, what's ridiculous is the suggestion that that is the be all and end all of the discussion with respect to public safety, because it's not the argument that people don't kill or guns kill people. People kill people. They make all these things into cliches that nobody really listens to or cares about anymore. It's just so silly. I mean, I can't think of anything else.
Well,
mind you, sorry.
I was just going to say with silliness and cliches, I wonder how long it's going to take for our Conservative Party up here to realize that going around with alliteration on people is going to wear thin. I know it's kind of wearing thin with me. Let's get down to the basics. Let's not get into the name. And I think, as you said, in pre-production, it's almost like kids on the playground at recess.
Yep.
And who's going to have the biggest insult, and then who's going to have the biggest fight, or let's get down to what the basic issues of this are, and let's debate the points of what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and let's get some civility back into politics. Maybe then you wouldn't have to have all those police officers to surround you and protect you when you go and visit your local Dairy Queen or something,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, we have a lot of weak people who are driven by emotion as opposed to logic, and at the same time, there's a large portion of the population that has no sense of humor, and doesn't get sarcasm at all. And that usually that is part of the problem, where they see. I mean, if you start censoring people for memes and sarcasm, then you're going to put a whole lot of cartoonists and newspapers out of business.
Very true.
The shows, the late night talk shows, will have nothing to do, because everything they say will be then seen as an insult, and everyone runs off to court. I mean, we're going through an era right now, I think, Bob, where excessive approaches to everything are the norm until as you rightly point out, people get tired of it and go, okay, this is not, it's not having any impact anymore, so knock it off. They want to get my attention. So there's a great deal of truth to that, and I think we need to recognize that there is a thin veneer of civility at the moment, which needs to be strengthened a little bit, so that we can get things back to some kind of even keel. But until these issues of these elections are out of the way, or the ones coming up, certainly in Canada, we have a very confused constituency at the moment. In your neck of the woods out in BC, it's very interesting to watch from the outside how quickly things are flipping. Now, whether you believe the media or not, or the polls or what have you, you'll find out once the election takes place if all this pre-election malarkey actually has any octane in it.
Well, I think at this point in BC in particular, we've got the ruling party, which has a fairly big, if you'll forgive the expression, war chest to take on this election.
Right.
With a very, very relatively new party who hasn't got quite the same amount in their funding to do things.
Yes.
So, we haven't even had the writ dropped, which is supposed to happen tomorrow to start the election process. But I'm already sick and tired of listening to the ads about, this new leader, and he did this and he did that. And I'm thinking, well, he might have been part of the government that did that, but we haven't had a Conservative Party in British Columbia here for 50 years.
Yeah, wasn't it Bennett who was the last Conservative there?
I think it was more conservative. They were the Social Credit, I think, was their political norm.
Oh, okay.
But conservative.
Corrected.
And with other things, just to confuse people even more, we had the BC Liberal Party, which was very conservative. So yeah, I don't blame people for being under underwhelmed and confused about this. It's kind of like I'm going to be like Mr. Rodriguez and I'm going to resign my seat and I'm going to sit as an independent, but I'll probably still vote with the government.
And still get paid.
And still get paid, yeah.
Until they toss my behind out, or it comes to the, like, how long is he going to do that if he's going to be running in Quebec as ostensibly for the leadership of the Liberal Party provincial?
Yeah.
Like in what real world country do you do that? I mean, do we not have a division here between the federal government and the provincial government? How does that work?
It's been blurred for so long. I mean, I always thought there was supposed to be a separation of church and state, but that seems to have been.
Oh, we got two churches here competing.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm beginning to see evolving in the next years, in particular in Canada, is a resurgence of provincial rights, I think. And in one way, I kind of applaud the Quebec Premier for demanding the Bloc dissolve Parliament by voting against Trudeau's regime, because he's saying that the amount of intrusion by the federal government into the affairs of Quebec is becoming intolerable. Obviously, he's focusing on immigration as the main thing that.
Well, there's that, but there's other things: education, housing. That's all provincial stuff.
Yeah.
Healthcare, dental care.
Well, there's a myriad of these things, and I think that there is probably a need to flush out this federal government's intrusion into provincial matters. Now, it's been going on certainly since Trudeau came to power, and there was some elements of that in previous governments as well. But I think it's time to draw a line in the sand. Moreover, maybe even clarify those areas which are,
clearly,
unfortunately, joint jurisdiction. Exactly. It's not helpful. People are confused. They're paying way too much taxes as a consequence of that sort of stuff, because it's, in a way, some of these programs are double taxation and too many fingers in the pie, which means you got to pay the people with their fingers in the pie. I
think the classic for that here was Roxton Road.
Yes.
The federal government unofficially establishing an official port of entry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure how that's supposed to work, but if it's a place where you have people greeting people and taking their statements, etc., why didn't that fall under the Safe Third Country Agreement that was supposed to be relatively safe for people to not be sent back to imminent death or whatever?
Yep.
I don't know how it'll work. Look at Europe. I saw something, was it yesterday or today, where the Dutch are now looking to be able to find a loophole to send back Ukrainians of military age back to the Ukraine, because they don't want them in the Netherlands anymore.
Yeah, well, that to me, but that is so hypocritical. You want to blow up people there, but you don't want to do it yourself. I mean, come on.
No. But it's just, I wonder whether there is not to play the amazing Kreskin here, but is the EU dead? You now have Germany doing immigration customs checks on their borders again. Hungary is putting up a fence.
Well, I think the EU is in many ways failing. It's failing because it became too big, too self-important to the elites. They forgot about the purpose of the EU, 30 years ago now, because now, we're old guys. But I remember when I was living in Europe at the time and very much tuned into this whole business for the EU expansion, particularly into Eastern and Central Europe. There were some wonderful concepts, open borders, increased security, blah, 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 among the EU states, for example. But they took that way beyond to the mandate of what the EU was all about. Now it's involving itself in things that have nothing to do with with making life better for all the countries of the EU. And I think that's one of the reasons why the UK left. Because there's just the intrusion. We're just talking about the federal government intruding on provincial matters here. The EU became the federal government of Europe that started to intrude on the sovereignty of these countries that joined up primarily for economic reasons, not for political reasons.
And I guess the other side of that is
up.
You don't have the ability to vote in your EU member into the.
No, you don't.
It's appointed.
Yes.
So, yeah, I can understand being upset with that and having these people who really may or may not understand what your point of view is, making rules on things that inevitably will make them better off.
Well, I don't think, for example, the recent excursions into foreign policy by the EU have done them any good. It's led to this business of involving itself in the spat between the Ukraine and Russia is now costing Germany, the engine of the EU, to become essentially deindustrialized. I read yesterday or the day before that Volkswagen is going to close down 2 of its manufacturing plants in Germany, first time in 87 years that's ever happened. Germany is essentially in a recession. You've got France, which Macron, the other leader who is turning out to be pretty infantile in some of the things he's doing, he's been impeached by putting, you can't make this up. He appointed a right-wing prime minister, and he's a left-wing guy who's now turned on him with Marie Le Pen, and they've impeached him. You have to question whether they know what the devil they're doing. You've got the typical warmongering by the colonials in UK. They're going to take over. They're going to fight the war with the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians, and everybody's going, "What are you talking about? You got a 60,000 man army. What are you talking about?" And they all seem to think that the world is still orbiting around the colonial powers that make up the EU. Well, I got news for them. Nobody cares outside of the EU.
Well, I guess that also brings a point. I don't know, point I don't understand, which deals with immigration in particular. All these refugees that are moving, why do they want to go to Germany and to Britain and to the United States and Canada and other places when apparently we are the devil incarnate? Why do you want to live here? And what's the big draw? Obviously, there must be something that's good in the eyes of these people to come here. And yet, on the other hand, as you say, we've got these other people that are on the other side of the coin. Well, let's get into a war because our economy is suffering.
Yeah, well, the business that is going on in Middle East, it's going on in between the Ukraine and Russia, and China and Taiwan. These are all historical matters that cannot be dealt with in 21st century warmongering theaters. I'm sorry. The business in the Middle East between the Palestinians and the Israelis, the Jews, has been going on for much longer than a lot of recorded history of some countries. So that's an issue, which, by the way, the Palestinians aren't Arabs. They're not Persians. They're Palestinians who are not particularly given too much support by their neighbors who's not Israel. Okay, Turkey, which is supposedly a sectarian but Islamic country, is the only one that cares about them. The rest of the place, the Egyptians don't want them. The Jordanians don't want these people. So this is a very long history of animosity there. And you know, the yardsticks we use today in many parts of the Western world, meaning the EU and North America, are improperly measuring what the problem is in the Middle East. As far as Ukraine and Russia, these are kindred spirits that are pissed with each other right now, and it's like a family squabble. It's suddenly everybody thinks that from the outside, you know, there's democracy involved, and there's fairness, and there's the rule of law and sovereignty. Please, you know, give me a break. You know, this is Western nonsense, and we're making a lot of money on it because billions of dollars are being spent on killing hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians, so that the you know, Lockheed Martins of the world and the Raytheons and the General Dynamics of the world can make some new weapons while they sell all the junk or whatever to these hapless people over there who are essentially getting killed. And then wrapping up with this Taiwan thing that's been going on since the end of the Second World War. What are we talking about here?
I guess measuring sticks. To me, a big measuring stick is the number of people that seem to be on the move out of these areas to other areas where they hope it's going to be safe and secure. And you know, and don't get me wrong. I mean, if I was in the same situation and it was my family being bombed to death, or you know, my kids happen to be taken off into war somewhere, or being targeted because of this, that, or the other thing, I'd be looking for a place to move the family to as well. And I would be on the internet searching safe countries and, you know, maybe not queering democracy the way we understand it, but yeah, I don't blame the people for being on the move, but we've lost track of the total number of people that are moving, that are on the move, that will be on the move.
Well, yeah, and a vacuum has been created in the scheme of things, because a vacuum by its nature sucks in things. And the vacuum that we've created in Western Europe, or the EU, and in North America is that we don't know what it is that we want to do collectively as communities or as societies with the hundreds of millions of people outside of our little concave. So the vacuum is there is no system, there's no border, there is no rule of community. We're experimenting with something as we're going along here, without understanding what the consequences are strategically, or even in the short term. You know, just in a microcosm, if you bring in 2 million people into a country like Canada, but you're short 1.5 million houses, where are these people going to live? That's a vacuum. You created a vacuum that you cannot fill with you know, reasonably happy people.
Well, so, and then the other side of that coin now is that 2 provinces in Canada have the bulk of the 1.5 million people that don't have homes. So the ace geniuses that are running the place now decided that, well, let's just move them all across the country. And, exactly. You know, provinces like BC, which has X number of population, will now get X number of these homeless people to deal with. So you're again, you've got a federal government that's intruding onto the provincial. But you know, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, these people are supposedly covered by the charter. Well, not supposedly, they are covered by the charter. And I don't know how you're going to take somebody from the province of Ontario or the province of Quebec and move them to Tuktoyaktuk.
Well, I don't even know what the machinery legally is for the federal government to say you have to move. Best of my knowledge, the mobility rights in Canada are in the charter, say you can go wherever you like. You know, we ran into that years ago when we were issuing visas to people who were essentially chosen by Quebec to go there, and as soon as they landed in Montreal, they took the next plane and went to Toronto, and you can't stop them. You know, we
No.
can't stop people inside Canada. What are you gonna do? What are we gonna set up gulags in different provinces? Like what this whole thing about Trudeau and Miller talking about moving people to other with what machinery would they do that?
Well, it's
How
true.
would
Yeah.
there is no legislation to do that. In fact,
And
it's
it'd be interesting
contrary
because,
to
if they do come up with a piece of legislation, guess what the first words of the legislation are going to be? Notwithstanding.
yeah. Well, you know, the stupid, I mean, and I say stupid comment that the Minister Miller said was, you know, we'll just rent a hotel and move them there somewhere. You know, excuse me? What do you mean you're going to rent a hotel, build a hotel? You know, where's
Yeah,
that
if you
effect?
build a hotel, then you should be able to build homes. But
Well, that's, you know, so, you know, this is so juvenile and
well,
so
it's
pathetic. But that's what we have. We have a vacuous leadership, hence the vacuum that follows. Just on the issue of immigration and refugee, human mobility is something that, you know, is manageable. I'm not saying controllable 100%, but it is manageable. And in fact, you know, we've spoken about this before. We did a pretty good job until the last decade of
mhm.
dealing with immigration. And immigration was a positive thing in Canada. Now we have people saying really nasty things about immigrants because they're
Mhm.
pissed with how this bunch has, you know, managed something that was never perfect. That's not, you know,
Oh,
we're not,
don't delude ourselves. No, it was
yeah,
not
not at
perfect.
all. But it sure wasn't the catastrophe this really is an existential threat to Canada and Confederation, because you start pinning province against province using people who have no vested interest one way or the other. They're just the
To the
tools.
pawns. Yeah.
Exactly. This is not going to end well. That
Well, no, and I guess the other side of that coin is that, are you not then going to make these people targets?
sure.
No, we know you're going to move 65 people into this hotel. Well, let's go down and just take that into account.
And
It's just so, again,
and
it
don't forget,
seemed like a good idea at the time, and then we mentioned it out loud.
yeah. Don't forget that these are the same people making the decisions that would suggest that you and I questioning this would be misinformation, or we would be doing, you know, we're doing disinformation to screw things up. These people are evil. I'm sorry, you know, because there's no other way to describe it. If you don't do it their way and you question it, then you must be evil.
Yeah,
We're not questioning the immigration. We're questioning how they manage it, but they don't like to be questioned. You know,
no.
these authoritarian
Well, yeah,
twits.
I guess that gets down to the other journalist that seems to be on quite a bit. Oh, what's he called now? Rebel News,
Yes.
who had applied for some of the money under the government funds to support Canadian content, and he's been turned down by the CRA for whatever reason, and they've appealed it to the federal court, and it's been turned down. And I guess that's just to show that if you don't do positive things about the government, then you're not going to get some of the money. That's what it
Well,
boils down to.
positive
Like
things in the eyes of the government, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So, and that's my opinion. But anyway,
no,
that's
I listen. You know, we're at the just as two guys talking over the fence as we do once a week. We're really in their crosshairs of these folks, and there are literally hundreds of others who do the very same thing individually or collectively, or, you know, independent journalists or citizen journalists, whatever you want to call it. We're neither of those things. We're just two guys, you know, kind of observing the scene. But they don't like that, you know, because you know, we can be as critical of anybody we like at the moment, but as soon as one of these leaders decides that, you know, being critical of them is an existential threat to their survival and power, we're in trouble. And
hmm.
that's that. And, you know, Bill 63, for example, is precisely the kind of stuff that we should be railing against every day. And, you know, you can't, I don't care if it's If it's the current government or the next one that comes along, doesn't matter. I don't care what their stripe is. You know, the freedom of speech expression is none of your damn business. You know, and
well,
like I
as
say,
we mentioned before, we used to be able to say it's a free country, and I can say whatever, but it's becoming wrong on both counts now.
It's getting scary, and of course, unlike our pals to the south, we don't have a First Amendment. There's no such thing in our Charter of Rights. So, you know, it's challenging times ahead of us on many counts. I noticed that they reduced the totally different issue. They brought down interest rates in the States by 0.5 point yesterday or the day before. But that looks like classic political intervention never happened before by the Federal Reserve. Something they maybe have learned from Tim in the Bank of Canada, because you know there's no only people who are making money on these are the hedge funds, but it's not building more houses. It's not giving more people money in their wallets. This is manipulation of a currency it's now to a great extent becoming worthless on the international market. So there's a lot of chicanery going on in the financial world, which we're not really paying a lot of attention to because we're getting all this smoke and mirrors nonsense with the election in the U.S. and the shenanigans in our Canadian political establishment. Meanwhile, there's other things happening which we better the old thing about having your eye on the ball. We need to start focusing on others that are happening around us, like this business of the BRICS countries, who are now have more wealth coming their way than the G7 put together. This is a big mistake. We need to get back to work. We need to be making things. We need to roll in the same direction. But apparently that's not something that this bunch is at the moment interested in doing. Capable, yes. Interested, no.
Very true. Yeah. However, I see we're almost at the magic witching hour here.
Yep. Well, we say we're gonna do a short one today because we did it on the 13th. So this would be well, actually, it's a week. Well, 7 and 13 is 20. Still.
I don't have enough fingers to count.
I got my shoes off.
Oh, okay.
All right, Bob. Well, listen, you all have a good weekend.
And you as well. Yeah.
Did you notice that? I had that drawl in there.
Y'all
have a good weekend.
Well, it's okay to say that. We're not gonna be poking fun at anybody on that.
No, thank you.
And if we did, we've probably gotten somebody's hair. So now we're back to where we started this off.
And remember your advice to our listeners and viewers. Hit the button that you liked it. Tell us your comments.
Well, yeah, and
buy us a coffee.
Yeah, because our finances are probably a little bit worse off than old Mother Hubbard's. So
yeah, Mother Hubbard doesn't even own her cupboard.
Yeah, that's very true.
I tell you. All righty. Well,
have a good weekend.
You too.
Enjoy the rest of your summer. We're kind of hoping that maybe we'll get a little bit more summer before the magic equinox date, but
one of two things will happen.
Yes, the old matchbook story.
Yeah. All right. Take care. I'll see you next week.
If not before.
Adios.
Adios.